Hi folks, welcome to the Western Australian Community Resource Centre online business planning program. My name's Andrew Huffer and I'll be with you throughout the program. And I'd like to introduce my colleagues John Denton and Ros Worth. Welcome team.
Thank you, Andrew.
We're really looking forward to this process. We're going to be taking through a 10 episode program, and throughout that you'll get to enjoy our company. And a lot of the time, we'll be stepping you through every single component of a business plan so you can walk away with your business plan intact and ready to go. So let's hear who we're going to be working with throughout this process. John, who are you? What are you doing here?
Well, Andrew, I work with business owners to help them, and organisational leaders to help them develop their businesses and organisations into a sustainable future, and hopefully a profitable future as well. And I do that through running seminars, workshops, business mentoring groups, and one-on-one coaching and consulting. I'm also the immediate past president of the Wanneroo Business Association, past president of the Stirling Business Association, and I'm a current board member of the Small Business Centre Northwest Metro. So I've got some very good experience of working with volunteer boards and working to get funding from local, state and federal governments.
Very good. Ros, good to have you on board.
Thank you.
You're with the Department of Regional Development.
Yes, I am.
Tell us a bit about your role and how it connects with the Community Resource Centres.
Yes, I work with the Community Capacity Division and look after the training needs of the Community Resource Network. And I guess our focus in training this year has been pretty much strengthening the capacity of business and governance practices and knowledge within the network, and hence this program that's running out online.
Very good. And myself, I probably should answer the same question. I've been doing a lot of work with CRCs, Community Resource Centres, over the last probably 3 or 4 years. I work for myself, so I'm an independent consultant, and do a lot of work in helping Community Resource Centres do some of their marketing, and also helping them understand who it is they're working with and how they need to get in touch with them and engage them. And that's a lot of the work that we're going to be doing over the next 10 episodes. So let's hear a bit more about the program. John, can I hand over to you to take us through that, please?
Sure. Thank you, Andrew. This is module 1 of a 10 module program on business planning in your community resource centre. And whenever I'm working with organisational leaders or business owners, and I talk about business plans, the question comes up, why do we need to plan? And there's an old adage which says if you fail to plan, then you're actually planning to fail. And that sentiment is very well borne out by a little interchange in Alice in Wonderland between Alice and the Cheshire Cat. And with Ros's help, and Ros playing the part of Alice, we're now going to run through that little scene. So Alice.
Cheshire Cat, would you please tell me which way I ought to go from here?
That depends a good deal, Alice, on where you want to get to.
I don't much care.
Well, then it doesn't matter which way you go.
So I might end up somewhere?
Oh, you're sure to do that if you just keep walking long enough. And unfortunately, in a lot of businesses and organisations, I see a lot of Alices, very well-meaning people who are working very hard, but working hard and getting very frustrated and not getting anywhere because they don't have a really clear plan and action steps to achieve that plan. So what I'm going to do now is give you the big picture of what we'll be covering over the next 10 modules. So it's all about getting clarity and taking action, and today's session is about vision and mission. That's understanding where you want to go, and the mission is why do you want to get there? What's your reason for being? Who are your stakeholders? And how are you going to achieve your vision? That's underpinned by having some very clear objectives. We will touch on that today, and then we'll be doing a bit more work on that in the next episode. Objectives, to achieve the objectives, which is the what you want to achieve, then you need good strategies and projects. So the strategies and projects are really the how-to achieve the objectives. And then underpinning the strategies and projects, we have tactics and activities. So nothing happens until there's action. And that tactics and action section is about taking action and implementing the plan. And of course, in any organisation or business, the thing which underpins how people behave and how businesses perform, organisations perform, are the values and principles of the people involved in that organisation. So that's what we're going to be covering over the 10 modules. That's the very broad big picture. Now, there are some resources that you'll need to help you with that. And the first one is the department have put together a very comprehensive program workbook. And as the name suggests, it's something that you will be working in with your team, with your board, throughout this process. And the work that you do in that program workbook will create the content and the input, or at least some of it, for the business plan. And again, the department have put together a very, very good business plan template for you to work through. Now, you need those resources in front of you for every module of this program as we go through them. And hopefully you've got those in front of you now, but if you don't, you can get them from the CRC portal at the following URL on the internet. And it's https, make sure you put the S in because it won't work without it, https://extranet.crc.net.au. Now, with those documents in front of you, we're going to look at today's episode and what we'll cover. This is really about setting the scene. Okay, now Andrew and Roz are going to take us through a 6-step review process involving jelly beans. Now, I've got no idea why jelly beans are going to help with the thinking process, but I'm prepared to eat them to find out.
Why not?
And we're going to be looking at what your Community Resource Centre is really aiming to achieve and why it exists and its mission statement. So in order to get started, could you please turn to page 2 on the workbook? And on this page, you will see that it talks about purpose, it talks about outcomes, and it asks you to write down 3 expectations that you want to get out of the whole program. Now, the kind of things that come up are how to write a plan. That's quite a common one. And how to implement it. Again, it's no good having a plan unless people take action and actually implement the plan. And having a common purpose, getting everybody who's involved in your CRC having a common purpose and working towards that. Now, I know that Andrew and Roz have got some very good examples of expectations that other people have come up with. So can we hear some of those? Who would like to go first?
I think sharing of ideas, it was a good little incubator, those opportunities to discuss and I guess think outside the square and what other activities or pursuits the CRC could be involved in.
Yep.
And a lot of things similar to what you had before on screen. A lot of people were wanting to make sure that everyone was involved in the planning process, so that it wasn't just left to them to be holding the baby and doing all the hard work. So that was one of their expectations from the process.
Yeah.
And I guess that leads into that broad agreement that the team is united in the common goal activities. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Which also leads, I guess, into some sort of measurables and monitoring of the plan and their activities.
And one of the simple things was that people were wanting to walk away with a plan. So that's certainly one of the things we'll be helping you guys do as we go throughout the program.
Yes, and make sure that it's a living document and that the plan lives and breathes and evolves.
It's meaningful. Yeah.
So when you say a living document, I've heard that term a bit. If you're speaking to a normal person, what would that mean? Not that I'm saying I'm normal, but...
Good question, Andrew. By living document, we mean something that's being referred to often and being developed ongoing, so it continues to evolve and change as the business changes.
So it just doesn't go on the shelf and stay there, that's it?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Okay, so Andrew, I'm intrigued to learn about these jelly beans and how that's going to help me think. So over to you.
Anything's going to be useful, that's for sure. So with the jelly beans, we're going to help you set the scene and actually get focused on what you really want to do in terms of getting your plan happening. So we're using six different questions to do this. And jelly beans usually give me energy, and usually it's an illegal stimulation, I think, so that's all okay. And we're actually using an analogy for different coloured jelly beans with each questions we go through. So we're going to take you through 6 questions now. So if you can get turn to page 3 of your workbook, and that'll show you the questions. And as we go through, we'll give some examples as well to help you think about those questions, some of the answers that may come up. So the first one, we're going to go to the red jelly bean, and red often from colours symbolises feelings and passion and excitement. So the first question there is, what are your feelings about the Community Resource Centre right now? And in some of the workshops that I attended, people were feeling, had feelings of anticipation of what laid ahead and excitement about the process they're involved in, and some were feelings of uncertainty. What did you guys find in some of the workshops you were involved in? Yes,
I think frustration was a feeling that came out as well.
Yeah.
Frustration with getting people involved and finding volunteers and having a good board, but not insurmountable, just frustration. Rose?
Yeah, no, I think the same people doing the majority of the work as well, looking for others to be able to share that workload with, and that commitment at the local level.
Cool. The next question we've got there for you to think about is looking at using the white jelly bean, and white symbolises paper, facts and issues. And you can see we're pointing the arrows there on the slide there to the white jelly beans in amongst all the colour. So the second question is, what do you think are the key issues that we'll need to cover today and throughout the whole business planning process? So some examples I found in some of the workshops we've run before is that people wanting to find out what Department of Regional Development really wants from CRCs is one of the key issues that need to be covered. What are some of the things that you guys have been finding with workshops you've been running?
Yes, well, funding obviously is a common challenge that the CRCs or any not-for-profit organisation has. So finding other sources of funding so that they are not reliant on a single funding source.
Yep.
Is a key one.
Rose?
And I think the change in demographics of their local community, particularly regional, like a lot of the younger residents leave town, and a number of regional communities are finding that, their residents are more the ageing group at time. So it kind of is transient in nature, and it's just about adapting the programs or activities the CRC delivers to make sure it meets the needs of their community.
Cool. One of the other issues we've seen come up is for, I guess, the clients of community resource centres to actually understand what it is the CRC does and what are the services it offers and what's its point of difference. So there's a few things like that seem to have come up pretty regularly. Also, we'll step along now to your third question. And this is using the yellow jelly bean, which talks about optimism and potential. And the first question there is to get you to think about what are the strengths of your CRC and what do you think are the potential opportunities for the future. So this is really looking at what could be, what's possible in your third question. So Ros and John, can you tell us about some of the strengths you've seen in CRCs that you've worked with?
I think the long-term commitment of staff and the committee and the people who give their all for their communities, and often the CRC becomes the heartbeat of the community, the first point of call for a variety of needs. That is definitely one of the strengths. Often their relationships that they have with the Shire and other stakeholders and agencies that are in town. That's another huge strength. And I guess also because they have a captured marketplace, which then gives them a loyal customer base as well.
Cool. John, any that you can add to that?
Well, that covers quite a few of them, but it's interesting because it varies very much from CRC to CRC and some of the services that they provide, but definitely some of the strengths are filling the gaps that exist in the community, like providing a place for people to go to pay their rates and provide local government services and things like that, and looking after members of their community, whether it be working mums, and providing those services that they just wouldn't otherwise get.
Yep.
And I guess another strength is their peers in the network. You know, each CRC is part of the great wider network across the state, and the support that is offered from the Department of Regional Development as well.
Totally. What about some of the opportunities looking to the future, the strengths of things we talk about here and now? What about some of the opportunities for the future that CRCs could grab and take hold of? What do you see as some of those?
Okay, I mean, technology is a big one as well. So bringing technology to the local community and making facilities available to them. And as technology changes and evolves, then it creates more and more opportunities. Ros?
The opportunity to increase partnerships with other service providers, agencies in the town and with government, as you previously mentioned, John, and also to partner with their peers in the network, so to offer projects perhaps at a state level. There's a number of examples that we might refer to later in the broadcast. So there's lots of opportunities because each CRC is unique, and there's a wide range of activities that they can deliver.
Yeah, and one of the ones that I heard or saw was one of the CRCs down the Great Southern, and John, you mentioned about technology, and they brought technology together with training, and they were teaching grandparents basically how to use Facebook so they could stay in touch with their grandkids. So in a lot of cases the grandkids have moved to Perth to go to school, so these grandparents are finding themselves isolated. So quite a few CRCs have really taken a good opportunity, taken that on and teaching the grandparents to use Facebook, and it's just a really smart way of thinking about who was in their target market, what some of their challenges were, and then making it all come together. It's great.
Fantastic.
Yeah. We're going to move across to the dark side now and talk about what are some of the weaknesses of your CRC and some of the threats it may face. I'm trying to use my Darth Vader voice now.
And the black jelly bean.
Black jelly bean. Thank you, Ros.
Yes.
Very dark. So let's talk about using our dark voices. Some of the weaknesses, on a serious note, that the CRCs face or have currently.
I think the isolation of the town is one that often CRCs need to deal with, and obviously there's nothing that they can do to change that. And I guess one of the other ones is, well, there's numerous, but people joining the committee, the base of volunteers in completing a number of tasks or activities that the CRC delivers for their local community. So often it's the same people doing many of the positions across a variety of the not-for-profits in a town. So it's just about somehow sharing that and encouraging others to contribute.
Yep. John, any others that you've seen
Yes,
people
I guess
talk about?
Something that faces a lot of not-for-profit and like with the business association experience that I have, one of the challenges is staying relevant to your market, to your community. And that's something that the CRCs are faced with as well. And we mentioned technology as being an opportunity and a strength, but it can also be a threat in that now people can get access to technology without actually going to the CRC in some cases. So some of these things work on both sides sometimes.
Yep.
But that's where the brainstorming and the interaction within the CRC team comes in really handy.
Sure.
And I guess another weakness is like that example you referred to earlier. If staff are not familiar with desktop publishing or some of those more process side of the IT activities of CRC, then that's a weakness. As is also their building, their structure that might be available for, which can restrict what activities that they do deliver. They may not be able to deliver larger workshops or hold meet and greet, or perhaps even of some of the Westlink simulcasts that we'll refer to later as well. So it's about those kind of constraints which can be a weakness. And I guess also when we mentioned many people doing many things in regional communities, if there's a succession plan in place, there may not be somebody to replace a committed staff or committee member. And also, which we touched on earlier, if they're solely reliant on Department of Regional Development funding, be that or any particular source of funding. It's not conducive to any business practice.
I'm going to interrupt quite rudely here and take that a bit further, because I see that's actually a bit of a threat. And we're talking numbers here, and two numbers we need to consider are 1 and 15 as threats. This isn't something spooky 666 type thing. John, tell us a bit about 1 and 15. Why are they threats?
Well, the 15, are you talking about the 15%
Correct.
of income? Yes. One of the threats to any organisation, be it a business or a not-for-profit, is being reliant on a single source of funding. And in the business sales world, business broking world, which I've been doing, any business which has one source of income that's more than 15% of the total then is vulnerable, because you lose that one source, then you've lost 15%. You're starting to,
Yep.
the organisation comes under threat. So you don't want a single source of funding,
Yep.
and you want it spread across as many entities as you possibly can.
Cool. And I think that leads into, Ros, you hinted at it earlier about another threat being political change.
Yeah, that's right, and any of those associated impacts that may occur on funding, which just comes back to the reliance on one financial source. I mean, I know we've listed these as weaknesses, threats. However, they can also be a strength in CRCs accessing funding from other agencies and other grants. So it's just about, as you referred, just keeping it in that balance so that you're in a financially robust position.
Yeah.
Cool. And what I was starting to pick up there was that there's the opportunity to address some of those threats and weaknesses. And so where we're going to take you now with question 5, as you're filling in your workbook, is to think about what are the big, hairy, audacious objectives that your CRC could achieve. And that's really starting to bring out the green jelly bean. And that green jelly bean talks about creativity, what's wild, what's out there, what's possible. So I think it'd be good for us maybe to throw a few examples of some of that green jelly bean thinking, what's wild, what's big, what's possible, and for you to think about that in your own CRC. Who'd like to take that away? Wild, big, hairy, audacious.
Well, to make lots of money, that's always a good, hairy, audacious goal for a business or a not-for-profit. The thinking sometimes in not-for-profit organisations is that we're not-for-profit and therefore we're not trying to make money, and I think that's a false way to go. I mean, if you make lots of money, then you can provide lots more services and be a lot more value to the community. So set some good, big, hairy, audacious financial goals.
Cool.
And
Right.
I think big, hairy and audacious is often for a CRC to leave their premises and walk the community. Recently, Brunswick Junction, they went door knocking in their community for businesses and stakeholders, introduced themselves, said hello, this is what we do, how can we work together, is there common grounds that we can perhaps strengthen, etc. So for the people doing that, that's a big and audacious idea, just to perhaps put themselves in a more vulnerable position.
And some of the ones I've ran into, like out at a place called Mucka, I think its official name is Muckenbuden or Muckenbuden, depending on the pronunciation. Out at Mucka, they sort of really good opportunity to fill a niche in marketing, and so they were doing these great big vinyl banners for people, for local clubs and sporting organisations. They're also doing specialised printing for birthday presents. So a few farmers out there, they were probably looking for a few ideas, and they had some specialised printing as presents for wives and mums and got them back in the good books. So they really thought long and hard about who are the people out there, what do they need and how can we help them. Do you have any other examples, Ros or John, from your travels?
Yarloop springs to my mind, speaking about people out there when they have disadvantaged people coming for financial assistance to the CRC. They're invited to contribute and participate in the community garden, and then they're also able to harvest and enjoy the produce of that. So that's just a bonus way of helping them change their circumstance.
I mean, some of the CRCs put on some very impressive events throughout the year as well.
Yeah.
And that's a great community service. So again, don't be bashful when you're thinking of putting on events and involving everyone in the community, but go for the big stuff.
A lot of CRCs, they'll do fundraising, like the Daffodil Day, pink ribbon breakfast. They'll have long lunches, all those kind of activities, as well as the more formal based events with the Westlink simulcast, which has arrangements with WASO, the Black Swan Theatre, and so that's a way for cultural activities to be accessed in regional communities, which is wonderful. And CRCs plan lots of other sort of social events as well, tailored to whoever their demographics or their population are. They could be more of a seniors focus when they have the Have a Go, Gopher kind of race days, activities, intergenerational activities between the young and the older in the community, and perhaps some more male orientated ones with the butcher and the doctor for assisting men having access to medical checkups. So, the first part of the evening will be about, the medical checkup, procedural kind of activities, and then the second part will be about cutting a side of lamb, and that's followed by a barbecue. So that morphs into different presentations across the state. Can also be like pit stop, the men's pit stop, and the barbecue days. So a lot of CRCs are very skilled and effective and create lots of fun and happening in their communities with a variety of these events.
Yeah, it's a case of getting the team together and brainstorming, coming up with some great ideas. I like the long lunch idea.
Yes, so do the ladies.
I think they've gone out of business now. Don't see them anymore.
Another activity was Kalani have a mobile cinema trailer, so they take that out in the regions and they can set up the movies for the night wherever, which is wonderful.
Excellent.
So some great examples there of the type of big, hairy, audacious things you could get to get some energy back into your community and really show the relevance and strength of your CRC. So I'm hoping you've been taking the opportunity to take some notes as we go to get those down.
I have a couple more I just spring to mind as well. I was just thinking about Narrabeen that facilitated the kids in cars ones for children with or youth with P plates or L plates, L permit, like learners permits, P plates, and they were exposed to the safety, basic vehicle maintenance, and just what to look out for when you're doing country driving, I guess. So that was a really popular course tailored just specifically for youth. And I guess also Irinjur and Chunjunjara work with NG Media, and they run specific education, training and learning workshops for the Indigenous communities. And that's been well received.
Fantastic.
Participation.
So lots of great things happening out there with the CRCs. Our next question to you is, what's going to be your role in achieving this? So the question is bringing in the blue jelly bean, and the blue jelly bean is sort of about organising, getting structure in place. So the question is there for you to think about, what is going to be your role in making this happen? If you're on the committee, are you going to get other people involved? If you're one of the staff members, are you going to be talking to other people either on the staff or the committee? How are you going to make sure that things progress and go forward with the business planning process? It's a tough question.
That's right. When do we get to eat the jelly beans?
Well, I think you've been very disciplined so far.
Yes.
Very disciplined so far.
Okay.
But that's a good prompt for us to probably just have a short summary in terms of what we've covered to date. So we've used those 6 key questions. They're really focusing questions to help you think through what lays ahead, which we'll all cover in more depth in the next 9 episodes. And we've also introduced you to something, we've been quite sneaky about this, called the SWOT process, which is all about the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats that your CRC faces. So I'll just unpack this a bit for you in a moment. In between, let's talk just a quick recap of the 6 questions. So we asked about your feelings about the CRC at the moment with the red jelly bean. We talked about the key issues you need to cover with the white jelly bean. We talked about strengths and opportunities with the yellow jelly bean. We went to the dark side with the black jelly bean, looking at weaknesses and threats. Then we talked about the big, hairy, audacious objectives with the green jelly bean. And finally, we've just come back to what's going to be your role in bringing this all together with the blue jelly bean.
Andrew, can I just make a point there? It's a great process of thinking. And when you're working with a board or a team to keep everybody, if you like, focused on the same jelly bean at the same time, because then you don't get people putting up ideas and other people shooting them down.
Yep.
So it's very important for someone to take that role in meetings and brainstorming to keep people focused on the same colour at the same time. And the other thing I'll mention is that with the black jelly bean, a lot of people seem to like the black jelly bean, and the weaknesses and threats can start to take over because people can see more of those than they can see opportunities sometimes. So with whoever's playing the blue role and doing the conducting, make sure that the weaknesses and threats are treated like red wine, very healthy in moderation, but don't overdo it, so that it just doesn't swamp everything else. So I just wanted to make those 2 points.
Yeah, fantastic.
Black is like aniseed. It's a very strong flavour that can override the other tastes.
Okay.
Yes.
Indeed. Thank you. So, cruising along now, I just want to take you back to this thing I called SWOT a little bit earlier. And it's a planning terminology you'll hear quite a bit. So I just want to reinforce that. Again, it's about looking at what the strengths and opportunities are for your CRC, and also being recognisant of the weaknesses and threats that John's just referred to as well, but making sure we've got balance between them all. So I'd like to hand over now to John to take us forward in looking at the next part of the planning process.
Indeed. Now we're going to talk about the mission statement, and you'll find this on page 4 of your workbook, where what we would like you to do is draft up a mission statement for your organisation, for your CRC. And the way I find that people come to this more easily is if you think about the stakeholders in your CRC, who are the people who have invested themselves and their time in the CRC? Typically it falls into 3 groups. There are the people obviously to whom you're providing the services, so they're stakeholders, but also the people for whom you're providing the services, so be it the local government or Australia Post or all these other organisations that you have joint ventures with. Then, so it's the people that you're supplying for, the people you're supplying to, but also the people in your CRC itself, the people who work there, the employees, the volunteers, they're all stakeholders. And if we want to get really green about this, then we'd have to include the environment as well, because quite often, the CRC can play a role in looking after the environment in the community as well. If you think in terms of those 3 groups and what the CRC does for them, all of them, then you can start to formulate your mission statement. So it's your reason for being. Why do those people rely on you being there? And I just want to give a quick example, and then I'll get some from Ros and Andrew. I attended a function at the Royal Flying Doctor Service last night, and they've got a tagline which I think makes a brilliant, very, very short but succinct mission, and that is furthest corners, finest care. And the whole ethos of the place resonates to that tagline. Furthest corners. They will fly all over WA, and it's a massive, massive state, and provide the finest care. They provide hospital level care to everyone that they come into contact with. So I think that's just a very, very good example of how to get it down to, it doesn't need to be war and peace, but just think about what you do and why you do it and for whom you do it. So, Ros, Andrew, any examples you'd like to give?
Sure. I can give you one of my own, in fact. My wife and I have got our own cafe and catering business, and our mission is that people can feel welcome and comfortable, and they can eat healthy and delicious food. That's simple as it is. And the reason we keep it simple like that is that any staff member coming in knows this is what our place is about. And so if they're not about providing healthy and delicious food in an atmosphere that's welcoming and comfortable, perhaps they shouldn't be working with us. So we can make sure that everyone's on track with that right from the start.
Exactly right. And I can assure everyone that Andrew's Cafe does provide that kind of service. So,
and similar practice for a CRC. It's about why, what, and where, and just all being on the same page about moving forward into that future.
So get creative and work with your your team and your board and see what you can come up with. Also on page 4, it says, I know my CRC is achieving success when it. So again, think about how you will know if you're being successful and if you're meeting the needs of the community and the stakeholders. And something to think about, just going back to the stakeholders for a moment.
Yep.
Break it down into groups, because it won't just be one set of people that you're providing services for. So it could be aging people, it could be the youth in the area, it could be the mums, it could be cultural groups. And again, every CRC, every region is different and have different stakeholders. I'd like to add anything on that?
I think it's really, really important, not just assuming that what's good for one is good for another. And again, just to use the cafe and catering business, for us, we have a number of segments from people coming in on the way to work first thing in the morning, wanting a quick coffee and go, through to, like John mentioned, to mums groups, and also our corporate catering clients, as well as people wanting birthday catering done. So we've had to work pretty hard to segment that and understand what the different needs are and make sure that we're meeting those needs.
And I think it's really important a community resource centre puts in place a survey of their community, or a practice of how they can ascertain the real demographic of the community and not just work on an assumption or what previously existed. So it's really important to regularly monitor that, just to make sure all their activities are really tailored to the real residents at that time.
Yeah, whether it's a business or a not-for-profit, you want to know if you're being successful. So solicit feedback. I know some of the CRCs have come up with some really creative ways to get feedback on how they're performing. Some of them have feedback forms in the reception area. Others give out feedback forms after events, or get people to go online at an event and give feedback online. Or they do a customer service survey of the community to find out what they want. So get feedback on how you're performing and also on what people need. And then think of some ways, and this is on page 4 as well, some things that you can measure to measure the success. And being a business person and working with a lot of business owners, I tend to focus on the numbers. So when you've completed the business plan, you'll have a budget laid down for how much you want to spend. So it's very important to measure your actuals versus your budget. But there's a lot of things you can measure that aren't just financial. Andrew?
Yeah. One thing you could try is, perhaps for your training events, you could measure the number of invites you put out against the number of responses you've got. So you've got sort of an attendance percentage that way. So that way you can measure how effective your marketing is and what sort of offering you're making. Is that something that people really want? So it gives a good way to measure whether that training is actually what people are looking for.
And I think also if there's a broad representation from the community in engaging with your CRC in a whole myriad of activities and opportunities. It's not just servicing the needs of one particular group.
Yeah, so attendance at events, there's all kind of things that you can measure. But it's very critical, there's another adage that says that if you can't measure it, then you can't improve it. So if you want to know how you're going, then find the key measures, the key result areas in your activity and measure it so that you can improve it. So really, Andrew, that's about it for the mission statement side of things.
Very good. Thanks, John. And that's probably about it for today's episode, actually. We've actually covered quite a bit of ground in a short time, and I'm again hoping you've had the chance to take some notes as you've gone along. We'd just like to recap now. And in terms of the things we've covered the structure of the business plan. So John took you through the pyramid. We've taken you through those 6 questions using the coloured jelly beans. And John's just finished off with the mission statement now. So it's really helping you to think about what's possible in the future. In our next episode, coming up next, we're going to be focusing on business objectives. So getting quite specific on what you're trying to achieve, looking at how you could measure those, seeing do they involve some action type focus, are the objectives realistic, and do they come into some kind of time frame. So we'll be working with you through that process, and in between, and this is all part of the 10 episode process that we're going to go through from here on. One thing I'd like to encourage you to do between now and our next episode is to review the work you've done in the workbook, discuss the SWOT activity, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, with your colleagues and with the committee members, and also make sure that you transfer the work you've done in your workbook into the business plan template. So specifically, if you look at what was in from the mission statement, that goes into page 2 of your business plan template. So you'll have to be well on track and moving forward. Thanks, guys. It's been great working with you again. I think we've put together a pretty good episode, if I do say so myself. And I'd certainly encourage you folks to make sure you do plenty of work in getting this to take it forward, have a chat to your colleagues in your Community Resource Centre and put together a really ship-shape business plan.
Looking forward to episode 2.
Yeah, totally. We'll see you soon. Thanks.